Hello and welcome to another live. And yes, I still have no idea how to start these lives off. I don't know. I've got to figure out a good intro, I think. To be fair, though, by the time I start, people haven't been notified. So the only people that will hear my intro are people on Spotify or YouTube, etc., after the video's already been done or the live chat. So, anyway, I am the guy that knows everything, or says he knows everything about aliens, crop circles, men in black, the gods. And yes, it is gods. You do realise that in terms of the God of Israel, which would have been Yahweh, he was only written about because of the people that was from his area. Whereas Marduk was also a god, but of Babylonian. And so, thank you, Fudge Guy. So, if those followers of Marduk had written extensively about Marduk, then the Bible would be totally different. It would be about Marduk's story. So that's why it is, the God of Israel. You don't have the most almightiest being ever, the one that created the universe, being called God of Israel, and that's obviously because it was his Enlil's. That's who it was. He was in Israel at the time that the Bible was referring to. Prior to that, he was actually in Mesopotamia, so he wasn't actually in Israel until after the flood. Prior to that, he had his amazing temple, the biggest temple, which was covered over. How do you think it was covered over? About 10,000 years ago. It was the flood, so that's why he buggered off from there. And then a few other people rebuilt over that temple. We've got the evidence of that because we found the temple underneath. And the people that ended up, one of the people that ended up having that new temple that was built above was Ashurbanipal. And so yeah, that was Ashurbanipal's library. But the actual temple underneath was massive with a square. It's unusual that they have squares, but I have a feeling it was a square because it wasn't a city, it was a temple. So where they built their cities in circles, concentric circles, which is why we've got Atlantis, their temples they built with square, sort of square frame round it, garden wall, whatever you want to call it. Which is why when you look at Angkor Wat, but when you look at pretty much literally all the temples around the world, they're all square or an oblong sometimes, but not circular. And that's because the cities were circular, but the square, the temples were square. Anyway, I waffled on enough. Let's go to the questions. Star Alex has wrote, I went into a crop circle when I was 2 and always had dreams about aliens. Coincidence? Question mark. So the crop circles, if you follow the train of thought and the research that I've done, it would lead you to an orb of some description. So they're normally not tennis ball size, normal basketball size, maybe a slightly bit bigger. And they're the ones that create the crop circles. UFOs have been seen over crop circles after they've been made. No one's seen a UFO make a crop circle that I'm aware of. And which gives you the impression then that the message that the orbs are leaving are for aliens as opposed to us. Because obviously if it was for us, they would have done them smaller and they probably would have worked out by now that we haven't got a clue what the messages mean. So obviously clearly they're not for us. So there's obviously you get many different phenomenon when inside a real crop circle. Forget the fake ones. People have been healed from cancer and all sorts of things. Batteries obviously died because inside the crop circle is an electromagnetic field that was created because of the microwave frequency that was produced by this is all documented by Dr. Levengood, by the orbs. So they produce a microwave superheat the nodes on the crop circles, and then the crops bend on the nodes, unlike people with planks who just literally squash it down. So could you have had dreams about aliens after that? I would say certainly. There's people who have had many different experiences sitting in crop circles. People actually go and sit in crop circles just to have some sort of experience, whether it's curing arthritis, all sorts of things that people have said that they've come away and have been healed. So having thoughts about aliens isn't that far fetched. So you could have. Fraser, evening sensei. Hope you're all well. Clark's after his operation the other day, still got teeth problems, so we're keeping an eye on it because obviously we don't want him to suffer. Fudge Kai has wrote hello. Hi Fudge Kai, thank you for joining. Ollie has wrote, seen that documentary about crop circles and sound frequencies. Not sure what that one is. I don't think I've watched that. I generally don't try and watch other people's research if I can help it. So I don't particularly know which one you're referring to, but hopefully it's a good one that sort of covers the same subjects as me. This is live, by the way, everybody. I'm reading out every single question. I've only just started, so Kurt Cutts has wrote, do you think that Ankh was used when people like Thoth need it to walk into Stargates? So there's a couple of questions there, really. So first of all, for me, I don't think they had Stargates. I know there's people out there that say they do. I just can't see it. I've gone through every time, someone mentions a Stargate, my brain goes through everything that I've heard, and the logic that if they had a Stargate, then they wouldn't have needed ships, and you could say, well, they needed a ship to get here first to put the... But they had ships going backwards and forwards. Then you could say, well, the Stargates were here on Earth and only went somewhere else here on Earth, which is possible. But to leave a Stargate here as well, because people said, there was one in Iraq, which is why they went in to steal it when, the weapons of mass destruction, blah, blah, blah. So I'm of the opinion that they didn't have that technology. I don't think the Anunnaki had that technology, from my opinion. The Ankh, a lot of people now are coming to the conclusion that the Ankh is actually the cross, the religious cross sign. And so basically, if you take away a couple of little bits off of the Ankh, you end up with a cross. So people were saying that was the first cross. Now, obviously, we now look at it as a straight line and a straight line, but way back with the Knights Templar and stuff, the cross was actually it flares out at the bottom and it flared out at the sides and it flared. So you get the idea, and it flared out at the top. So could the Ankh have been the original symbol for the cross? Well, obviously, if I got crucified, the last thing I would ever want to see is a cross. So I have no idea why people would use the cross to say, hey, if I was Jesus, I'd rather you used absolutely anything else other than some nails and a cross. They're the two things I wouldn't want you to be showing me and worshipping, and that would be the most craziest thing. So could the Ankh be that? I don't know. It's possible. So going back to your point about the Ankh and the thing, because obviously there was other symbols as well in Egypt. It wasn't just the Ankh. So I would probably say no to using that to go through a Stargate. But it's a good point. So I'll tell you what, go number 3 in the class for a good question. Donna's joined with a little kiss and wrote hello. Oh, thank you very much for that kiss. I will take that kiss, and I will... Anyway, it's a family show, so we'll move on. Ollie's wrote, they match certain frequencies to make the same shapes as some crop circles. Oh, did they? That's interesting, because obviously the Earth has got a frequency. We know that as a fact. You can look that up. Now, obviously, whether or not that frequency matches the ley lines is another story. Go read the latest book from that author. But Yeah, so basically, for those of you who don't know, you can put sand on like a sheet of metal and then a speaker underneath, and as you change the frequency of the sand will create these patterns, sort of almost like fractal patterns, which also similarly, but not quite, look like crop circles. So with crop circles, they also have lines and things. Not all of them, but some of them do have lines. So that's not something you normally get when you're doing the frequency test. So simplistics. When I say simplistic crop circle images could probably have been recreated using a sound and some sand, but some of the other ones where they've got sort of smaller circles and then bigger circles and stuff like that, it's not symmetric. Whereas the sound frequency, sorry if you can hear a washing machine in the background, the sound frequencies on a speaker produce a symmetric image, whereas the crop circles are not always symmetric. So that's why I don't think it's the sound frequencies from Earth. I still go with the people that said that they've seen and filmed. People have filmed crop circles being formed. Watch my videos if you're interested in the Oliver Castle one, and if you think that the Oliver Castle one's fake because you listen to some YouTuber, feel free to watch my videos, and then you'll realise one of us, and I'm not going to name names, but one of us who has been filming for a very, very long time, editing, CGI, you name it, as well as researching our true history, knows all about what software was out at that point because he was using that same software. You get the idea. He's not daft when it comes to filming anyway. So yes, and so my videos basically point out exactly why that guy that filmed it was correct, even though later on he ended up into special effects himself, which back then when you had a V8 camera, which is what he had, they weren't cheap. So you had to be dedicated to buy a V8 camera back when he had one, and I had one. This was before digital. This was before even before high 8 tape format. So basically, he was interested in filming. You don't buy a camera for the sake of it. You buy a camera because you're interested in filming, especially back then. Obviously nowadays people make all sorts of crap on their phones, including me, but they're not films, whereas back in them days you buy a camera to make a film. That was really what you did. You didn't go around and just film cats like people do now. So yeah, anyway, he was young, so of course he would have had his mates and made films. So when he moved into special effects later on, people said, aha, therefore he had the technology. He didn't have the technology. He did not have the technology to recreate what he did because he had the background. The background was moving on all axes because he was moving and zooming in and everything. So, bottom line is, his footage, Oliver Castle footage, is genuine. Watch my videos if you're unsure. Helter Skelter has wrote, have you heard about the moon being used as a soul reincarnation tool? Yeah, I have. Yeah, no, just ignore that. I know. I think I've actually seen the Y-Files episode where he mentions that as well. No. So the truth of the matter is, souls are eternal. So that's one thing. That's based off of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and clairvoyants and mediums and spiritualists that I've spoken to. The reason why people believe that the moon is something to do with a soul, and I was going to do a video after watching the Y-Files. I thought I might as well just sort of show him up, but I can't keep doing that because I literally, what was it the other day? Chris Redford, another researcher, he said something on a George Norrie Coast to Coast episode, and he was wrong, and I could quite happily, easily prove it. And I thought to myself, do I go and prove it? Because I've showed, not obviously they may get some things wrong, they may be perfectly correct on others, and if I just keep picking out the bits where they're wrong, it's going to make me look really bad. So I didn't bother. But anyway, so basically going back to the moon. So abductees and remote viewers, so this is where the reference comes into it, have seen containers that hold the orbs on the moon. So the story goes that, oh, it's a soul trap, therefore they're being held there, blah blah blah. It's not like what you think it is. So yeah, just no. They are using them. Yes, aliens do hold the souls, but they work with them. It's not a soul trap. So yeah, Jane has wrote, "Hi everyone, hi Jane. I think I missed you the other night. You wasn't on. I was sad, but now you're here. Yay!" Graham, Gareth has wrote, there was a really purple stroke pink sky in South Wales last week. Any explanations or similar phenomenon? Oh, I mean there has been different coloured skies all over the planet for a very long time. People used to, even recently, as you say, there's videos online you'll see of certain areas where it's got a particular colour sky. The question is, what you really ask is, what would cause such an effect? And I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, it could be. Really, I mean, the reason why the sky is blue is because of the atmosphere. So to make something not blue and change it into a different hue would require some other light frequency, I would have said. I'm just guessing here, I'm not an expert on this. Sorry about the washing machine, it will stop in a sec. So another light frequency would be produced, because obviously at night we can't see the blue sky. So therefore it's blue because of the sun, but not because of obviously the sun's rays coming through our atmosphere to give us that blue that we see. So could there have been a UFO, a cloaked UFO, massive up, stratosphere, somewhere like that? Possibly. Could when I say cloaked, obviously then the sunlight would reflect or refract off of it and give us possibly a different hue. It's possible, I guess. I'm not an expert on that, so I don't know. But people have said about the sky colour for years. I mean, in the olden days, it used to be people used to say, "Oh, red sky at night, shepherd's delight." But I think there were other stories of different coloured skies at night. But of course, back then, no one had cameras, so it didn't really make much difference. But I don't know. Yeah, you got me on that. I would love to know. Salvatore's joined. Right, hello there. Hi, Salvatore. There's some people catching up with your record of excellent questions nowadays, Salvatore. Junex is getting there. I think some of yours were still just pip his, but Aussies wrote, I've seen a UFO up close, personal, with a rear guard. When you say a rear guard, I'm guessing you're referring to something that's. I'm guessing you're not on about a guard row. I'm guessing you're on about a physical being that's guarding the rear entrance. Salvatore's wrote, do you think the Anunnaki kept on working with the Greys knowing their advances in technology? I do, because the Greys do have elongated skulls. Obviously, there's different types of aliens, obviously. But aliens, the Greys, both even types have an elongated skull. The Anunnaki genetically modified species, we know that. In fact, we're here, so that's one species that we definitely know for a fact that they genetically created. And then you've got the Nefertiti Akhenaten's family lineage, where they only had elongated skulls, and they suddenly was put into power to worship Aten. So someone created them for sure. You don't suddenly have an elongated skull and then marry someone else that's got an elongated skull. I've never come across anyone with an elongated skull. So they were put in power clearly by one of the gods, and in my opinion, Marduk, because Marduk was also the sun god Ra. So down the line, 1,000 years later, he changed his name, or possibly mistakenly, whatever happened, but it ended up being Aten, also the sun god. So yeah, I mean, if you think that Marduk was Thor in Norse mythology, and he had help creating weapons with dwarfs, as the story goes. Obviously, dwarfs, in my opinion, would be a little grey compared to us humans. And of course, if they're referring to human dwarfs, us human dwarfs or any human dwarf wouldn't have had the technology to build the weapons for the Anunnaki. And of course, the Anunnaki, right back in Sumerian times, had their own weapons, but nothing like what was described, down the line from Norse mythology or Greece with the lightning bolts, etc. They did have. I mean, you could argue, well, the Mahabharata and another Indian name that I can never remember, did write about sort of like being like beams, flying from one place to another. So obviously they did have some sort of technology, but so yeah, I do. I know it's a bit of a stretch, but I do think that the Anunnaki were working with the Greys or a particular elongated skull alien to then, genetically create a more superior one, which is why he put them in charge of Egypt, and probably created some more and put them in Peru, which is why we ended up with the only people with genuine elongated skulls in Peru were high up in charge people. They weren't just peasants. So someone put them in those positions of power. You don't just suddenly, a particular species suddenly appear and then. So obviously, clearly, it was an Anunnaki that would have gave them that power position, but yet they were half human, so therefore they were genetic modified. So yes, I do think they definitely dealt with one particular alien race, if not more. So good question, obviously, as always from you. Go to number 2 in the class. Fraser's wrote, was the cross a Nibirian, in other words, an Anunnaki symbol? Not that I'm aware of. Obviously, you've got the wings, and normally a person standing in the middle of the wings, or you've got their home planet symbol, which is a sort of a round thing with the wings and then two little legs coming down at the bottom. So I don't think the cross. I've never come across anything that. I'm just trying to think of all the tablets that I've looked at. I do scrutinise and I find it so fascinating to look at what clothes they wear and stuff. I find it fascinating. But yeah, no, I've not come across it. But it's a good question. Go to number 3 in the class for that. That's a good question. Ollie's wrote, they were suggesting the frequency is been sent out from the UFOs. What is that? What the UFO program? See, that's the thing. I've not come. I've been doing this for a long time. I've never come across anyone that said they've seen a UFO create a crop circle. Amount of people that have said they've seen orbs before, after, and during a crop circle, but I've never ever heard of someone saying yes. I've heard after crop circles, UFOs for sure, but I've never actually seen anyone with the evidence, in terms of their own eyewitness account saying they saw a crop circle being formed. Again, not to say that I know everything, and it's possible that there may be, and I'm just not come across that information. But we do have video footage of a crop circle being formed, and we've got orbs also leaving crop circles and flying over tractors and going way off into the distance. Just hovers all the way along. It's amazing. So there's lots of that footage around. So I would probably still go with. I think they're guessing, to be honest with you, on that program that it's a UFO. because the logic isn't there as well. What benefit would there be to create a crop circle on Earth? I can't think of any. But what benefit goes the other way for a light energy being that has no vocal cords? What way could they communicate with an alien race? And that is a pictograph, which would have been the crop circle. So it makes sense, unless the UFO is replying to a orb, in which case I guess that's a possibility. But again, I've not heard it, so I don't know. I just have a feeling maybe they're just clutching at straws on that one. And the logical, obviously, it makes sense. UFOs, crop circles, but I kind of go with the evidence, and so far I've not come across that. So I'll stay with the orbs at the moment, doing it and giving a message to the UFOs. James wrote 7:30 time check. Thank you very much, Jane. So this is live. I'm reading every single question out, and I am 13 minutes behind. Thanks to Jane for letting me know. Amor has wrote, the Earth is not a sphere. Feel free to watch my video that's pinned on my profile. Just click my profile and watch the pinned video. Could you be the one out of tens and tens and tens of thousands of people that could actually not only answer but prove that it's flat if it's not a sphere? Could you be that one person? Even though I've obviously told, and it's not even worth going down that road. Aussies wrote, a huge space in the middle and all kinds of what looked like piping going around the centre space. I'm just trying to think what you was referring to there. I'm just scrolling back. That was the one that you were saying about that you've seen up close and personal. Let me just read that again now. A huge space in the middle, all kinds of what looked like piping going around in the centre space. I'm guessing that's inside the craft now. Because no descriptions of UFOs have I ever heard that they had piping on the outside. They're normally very smooth, very, they don't have nuts and bolts. They're normally fashioned from one whole solid piece of something. And I know we used to say, that's impossible. Back in the 80s when people said there was no rivets, no nothing, people would say that's impossible. However, we now have 3D printing where it prints something with no nuts and bolts, or so you could, give us another 3, 4, 500 years, we could be printing metal UFOs with no bolts and seams. So I'm guessing you're referring to the inside of the craft. Martin has wrote, the moon original name was Sin. I would love to know where you got that from, Martin. I'm not knocking you. I'm just interested to know where you got that from, because that's, to me, that's not the original name. The original name, there's two for it, depending on who you ask. And these are from Sumerians, so I don't know if you can go back any further than that. Obviously you can't, I'm just being facetious. So unless Sin was a Sumerian name, then it's a newer name than the older ones that I'm about to mention. So we've got Kingu, which was one of the names for the moon. And I am struggling to remember the second name now, but it's not Sin. Oh, my brain's gone. Sorry, there is a second name. I've said it on lives before, but it'll come to me. Sorry, my back's hurting. I keep having to change position on this bloody settee. Salvatore's wrote, how's the movie going? The one of the companies that was interested in financing has not turned us down, has basically said that they've got their slate of movies is because they was waiting on this other companies. Basically, two companies were interested in putting in the money, and I think it was the first one that was obviously waiting for us to get part of the extra finance. They basically said that their slate for next year's full now, so my producer is looking for someone still. The first ones are still interested, but the second ones, he's basically got to try and find someone else now. But we have got something planned for the beginning-ish of the year, probably March. I'm not allowed to tell you what that is, I'm afraid. Sean has wrote, who is God and did he create the Anunnaki? So chemicals created the Anunnaki, same as chemicals create pretty much everything, in terms of biology at least. And if you're unsure on that, just look up what chemicals are required to create life and you'll see the answer, and there you go. So we know chemicals create life. I know people say, I still get that to this day. I still get people saying, who created the Anunnaki? And I say chemicals. Over time, chemicals bash into each other and create a single-celled organism, blah, blah, blah. And I still get people saying, no, God must have created the Anunnaki. And I say, because they say, you can't have them from chemicals. That's what they say. They think that the chemical idea is ridiculous. And they actually said, where's the chemicals? I said, everything's a bloody chemical, silly. But they actually say to me that the Anunnaki has to have been created by a god, because you can't have something would have had to have created them to be here, even if it was a single-celled organism to start with. Someone must have created that single-celled organism. And now I simply ask, well, who created God then? If something has to create something in order for something to be alive, who created God? And do you know how many actually reply? None. None reply. I think I did ask once on a live chat, and they said he's always been here, and that's just the answer. That's just a cop out. Well, then I could say the Anunnaki's always been here. We've got more texts of the Anunnaki than we have of the God of Israel that needs a lapis lazuli throne. I was debating with someone the other day actually on one of my posts, and he said God is everything, God's amazing, God's eternal, blah blah blah. And I says, I use the old lapis lazuli throne. I said, so he gets tired, does he? I said, tell me why he needs a lapis lazuli throne in Israel. And obviously he didn't reply, but he probably had no idea what I was on about, because these people, they seem to quote the Bible, but when you actually start using the Bible properly at them, you find that they fall apart, unfortunately. Don't hate me if you're religious, not my fault that the Bible is a copy of older texts. And the thing is, I do say, and I know I sort of tongue-in-cheek say I win, if you ever read my posts when people that's referring to the Bible and I just come back with the actual original text, and I say to them, you won't beat me, you can't ever beat me, because I'm going from the tablets that your book is going from. You never will win, and they eventually give up, because I just keep going back with what the original tablets say, and so I don't know. So who is God? So God is a race name for a race that we know as the Anunnaki, but the original their race name is God, same as us. We're humans, nothing special about a race name. And that's why you've got different gods. You've got Enki, Enlil, Nimna, she's goddesses, and so on. You've got basically loads of gods and goddesses, which is written about prior to the Bible being ever thought of. So we know, we've got 2 million tablets. We know that the gods and goddesses. So either God allowed them to use his name, and also Lord. They also call themselves lords. So either God allowed them to use his name, or they are the gods that we're referring to, which is why Genesis 1:26 was plural. But because the Israelites, etc., and the Hebrews ended up being the ones writing the Bible, do you think they want to write about Marduk? Let's be honest. Enlil was in Israel. He originally was in Mesopotamia at the top of the Euphrates, and he had a massive temple, the biggest temple ever, but it got sunk underneath the sands and silt and dirt and everything, as did everything, or a lot of the structures when the Great Flood. And then he moved to Israel, which is why you had the Ennulites, but people ended up calling them Israelites. But anyway, so he was the God. He is the God of Israel, which is in your Bible. So, if the people that was following him were following Marduk, then the story would have been about the God of Babylon. It's as simple as that. But people can't grasp that it's not necessarily the victor, but whoever wrote, and carried on the publication. Obviously, Marduk's got his own stories. He's got the creation story, the enumeration. He's got many stories that he's in, but no one sat and collated those. Otherwise, if someone sat and collated those, like they did with Yahweh's or Enlil's, if someone sat and collated Marduk's story, we'll have two Bibles, and one will be totally different from Enlil's Bible, because obviously Enlil's Bible admits that he's happy to wipe us all out many times. So the Bible's talking about Enlil, whereas if we looked at, for example, Enki's or Marduk's Bible, if their followers wrote a series of books, it would be different. It would be, hey, I'm saving people, as opposed to I'm going to wipe you lot out, which is pretty much what Enlil did. And we've got the tablets to prove that he did that. That predate the Bible that he's talking about, and we've got the flood, and we've got terminology in these ancient tablets. This is the beautiful part of these tablets. We've got terminology from the first ever language from people that shouldn't have the vocabulary, knowledge, or understanding of what was written in these tablets. You've got tablets talking about looking down when, and I've read out the translation. You can go read the translation yourself. I'm not hidden. Looking down when the Great Flood happened, and looking at people as if they're little, I can't remember the word, something like flies in a soup or something, all getting, killed basically because of the flood. And you've got terminology where they're trying to create the first creature, the first Homo sapiens. In fact, in my new video that I'm putting up on my Patreon page, I've already done part 1. Part 2 is carrying on, but it's the video's called, or documentary's called, The Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. And there's a beautiful part in the book of Adam and Eve. I don't know if you're aware of that. There's 2 books, and it basically waffles on a lot about a lot of crap. But there's one particular part where it literally says that Adam and Eve came from heaven, and where they were in heaven, you don't even have to read between the lines. You just have to listen carefully. Where they're talking about in heaven, they always had lights on, and everything was fine, and they had water, on tap, shall we say, clearly in a spaceship, as we know from Ezekiel when he went up and he stepped through a door in heaven. Seriously, come on. We know space is heaven, so he's obviously gone on a spaceship. So anyway, Adam and Eve were on this spaceship for a long time, and then finally brought down to a garden, which was a garden that belonged to... I'm not going to spoil it. Because it's coming out on the Patreon video, but basically it covers everything, and they get upset the fact that once they leave this garden, there's a desolate world out there, basically, full of monsters and stuff, which we all know would have been the dinosaurs, and so on and so on. So wait for the Patreon video. It's quite clever. Once again, I think I'm probably the only person that's pieced it all together. Simply because no one wants to believe that heaven is space, even though it does say it in the Bible, by saying that the moon, the stars, and the sun are all in heaven. And of course, we can see the sun, the moon, and stars, so it has to be space. And of course, the Anunnaki talk about going up to heaven all the bloody time and back down. So it's space. So when you work all that out, and then you start reading things like the book of Adam and Eve, it's so clear. But other people don't want to see that. Certainly religious people wouldn't want to see that. Sorry, I totally digressed there, but hopefully you found some of that interesting. This is live, by the way. I'm reading every single question out. Even if you can't see the question, it's probably further back. Thomas has wrote, aliens have been here a long time before us. Watched a video from 96 saying in the future we would see these lights. I mean, technically, people were seeing the lights way before even Roswell 1947. We've got Joan of Arc seen the lights. There was an armada. I wish I could remember where it is. I'll have to research it one day again, follow it, find it. But basically, there was, and this is in the captain's logs. I think it was a Spanish armada going to attack somewhere, and they had basically it was going to win, and then they saw these basically lights flying around in the sky, and something happened, and they decided to head back because they thought it was possibly God or whatever it was. I don't recall the UFOs actually doing anything to the ships, but these people, obviously probably religious people, got worried and decided to turn back, and that's actually in the logbook. So, this is going back probably 1500s or whatever. So there's stories of lights for a very, very long time, obviously. Fraser's right. I wonder how time works for the Greys. So obviously, we know time moves forward. So if they stood here for 10 seconds, that's 10 seconds forward. So I don't think they have a phase capacity to sort of just freeze. I mean, they freeze us, yes, by whatever it is they do to make us paralyzed. But I've never heard them sort of. I mean, maybe they do because obviously humans don't go backwards in time, but I think they would need technology if they went backwards in time. So I do think that they have everything still moves forward regardless of where you are. I know that Einstein's is relative as to where you are, which is true. But obviously, when they come here, then they're relative to me and it if it's standing in front of me. So it still has time moving forward. The question then really would be is what's their longevity, and supposedly from the things I've heard it's quite long. It's longer than our lifespan. So some of the apparently from contactees or abductees even, some of the Greys have been abducting people all their lives, as you probably well know and heard stories. But the people that's been abducted all the way through their, from childhood to way into late adulthood, they say that they believe it's the same entity that, and doesn't look any different from when it did. So that brought up obviously people saying, well, maybe they're time travelers, the Greys. Maybe they're going backwards in time. That's why they're always looking the same. And just picking up the person for the Greys, because they could possibly time travel. They could be picking them up within the whole lot 20 minutes instead of letting time pass, or they are as longevity of life as we've been led to believe, or I've been led to believe. So it's a good question. Go number 2 in the class for that. Salvatore wrote, do you think they're still descendants of Anunnaki who can live 300 plus years on Earth and walk now? Oh, Salvatore, good question. Go number 1 in the class for that. You're going to get all 3 spots again, aren't you? No one's asked me that. So do I think there's actually descendants, proper descendants, that can also live? People have asked me about is there descendants, but you've actually asked the question, would they be able to live the same longevity as Adam and Eve did, which was some 900 plus probably years. The question is, so the answer to that would be, if, let's just say, an offspring off of the Anunnaki maxed out, even at 1500 years, then someone would have had to have bred with them, with a human, prior to 1500 years for one of them, nearer to us in 1500 years for them to still be here. So let's say 1,000 years ago, and we've got stories of King Solomon being told by God to build a temple and whatnot 1,000 years ago. So it appears that at least one Anunnaki was kicking around at that point. So if one Anunnaki was kicking around at that point, then if they bred with a human at that point 1,000 years ago, and were given 1,500 as a max time, then yes, there could be people still here that are offspring of Anunnaki. Of course, the Anunnaki may have carried on living, but have not been known to us. They could be hiding in the Vatican or wherever, in caves or in UFOs or up in space, but still having human companionship and having children with them. So the answer, I guess, would be yes, it's possible that there is. It's just obviously no one's going to admit that they are, because the amount of scientists that would love to get their hands on someone that could live for a lot longer than we can. I mean, hair care products is one of the biggest, sectors. So imagine longer life. That'd be right up there with it, I'm sure. Free has wrote, asking is learning. I guess, yeah, that's a fair point. Salvatore's wrote, how many lives do you think the light being needs to go through to move up? Oh, Salvatore. Okay, you're going to go number one again, so yeah, sorry. Brilliant question as always. So how many? I don't know the answer to that. No one's. I mean, there is. If you go by the Buddhists and various people that are religious sects that talk about the different planes of existence. So in order for an orb or light being or spirit to go up to the next plane of existence, it needs to learn everything it needs to know. So I guess the answer really is, how long is a piece of string? And the reason for that is because if look at it this way, if you're an orb and you join with a monk who sits there doing crap all day long except for going you've not really learnt that much other than so you would probably think, oh crap, I'm gonna have to go around again. So some of them, I would say, would probably progress quicker. Thank you, Dave. Some of them would progress quicker than some of the other ones. Oh, thank you, Gary. Appreciate those. Yeah, so the answer to your question is, I think each one would depend on what they need to learn and how quick they learn it. Because also another way of looking at it, imagine, the orb joins with a person. So we don't have our own spirits, because just straight away, if you're listening and you're new, we don't have our own spirits. We're not born with a spirit. An entity joins with our pineal gland, and the reason why is because we know reincarnation is true. Just go watch or look at Virginia University's studies, the proper studies. So that orb goes into the next person, but of course, if you had your own soul, then how can you get that from the previous one? Because that previous one would obviously have belonged to someone else, and then you end up with two. You'd end up with your own, and then both of your souls will go off when you die into two other people, which each of those would have their own soul. So you end up, it just doesn't work. So as with the Emerald Tablets Thoth and clairvoyants and mediums, it's basically an entity that joins with us and connects with us, and when we die, we're in control of it until it crosses back over again to its own plane of existence. And then then it goes back round, and then when it gets to the third level, and I think this is pretty much the same for any religious or anyone that says about the planes of existence. I think the third one, I know some people say, well, there's one below us and stuff, but generally it's the third one where we get the guardian spirits, not guardian angels. Forget angels. Angels are messengers. Going back to your question, it depends, because if an orb joins with a baby and that baby dies, then what did you learn? Not a lot. So then you have to go around again. So I guess it depends on who they're with. I mean, it could be millions, it could be billions, it could be 10. I have no idea. I would imagine a lot. Pac-Man has wrote, brilliant service. BS, thank you. Thank you for writing brilliant service. I do try my best to give a service to people. It's not like a religious service, but thank you for writing BS. I appreciate that. Obviously, if anyone's got any comments where they could actually tell me that I'm wrong, no one does. All they'll ever do is just... moderator James muted someone. Sorry, it scrolled all the way to the bottom there. If you're religious and you know it, clap your hands. If you're religious and you don't want to hear our true history, just move along. Simple as that. I don't go onto your chats and, cause problems. I'm guessing it's a religious person. Normally they are that say brilliant service like that person just did for me. Just scrolling back down, sorry, to where I was. If Pac-Man's still listening. What happens sometimes, by the way, if you're new here, sometimes what happens is you get people like Pac-Man that will come out with, BS, and then they carry on listening. And then, depending on how I feel, I either block them or just let them stay. But they carry on listening, and they actually then start asking sensible questions. Because they realise, hang on a minute, this guy's making a lot more sense than anything else out there. Bibles, scientists, everything, archaeologists. And I know it sounds bad that I'm knocking the archaeologists, but let's be honest, you're not getting the real information, and you know it. Wayne has wrote, there was a moon god called Allah. That's where Muhammad got the name from. Oh, I mean, there's all sorts of gods. The literally was a god for pretty much everything. There was two, in fact, there was two. There was what was it? I can't remember if it was Akkadian, Assyrian, something like that. Where there was two gods, one for the beginning half of the year and one for the second half of the year. Quite crazy. I remember thinking to myself when I found that out, I was like, seriously, what are they doing? Like taking 6 months off? Yeah, okay, it's your turn now. I've done my 6 months. Salvador's Road, do you think light beings want to stay with the person for a long time or short to move on? Good question. Number 4, this is a good one, but not brilliant. Well done, though. Good question. They would obviously want to stay with the person. And from listening to not just clairvoyance, but obviously other programs where I have watched mediums, etc., on programs. Basically, it comes across that the orb or the spirit that's joined with you does its very best to stop you from doing yourself in, because that breaks the contract that the soul had. I know people used to say back in the day, "Oh, you make a contract with God." You don't. It's the soul makes a contract with the light energy beings. So yeah, I would. From everything I've heard, I would say that the orb wants to fulfill its. I mean, there's people. There was a woman on Coast to Coast that had a near death experience, paralysed, blah blah blah, and she went, and saw when she left her body or the orb with the orb. She left the body, and they basically said, "No, your job's not done yet. Go back." And she didn't want to go back, obviously, because she was all banged up and would have probably lost her legs and whatnot. But anyway, she decided eventually to go back, and she returned back into her body, and she lost her legs and whatnot. And she was on George Norrie's Coast to Coast, and George says, "Well, so what is it that you've, what was your mission then? Because obviously you had a mission." And she said, "I've been doing it. I've been teaching since this accident. I've been teaching." And she says, "I feel complete. I feel that that's what my purpose was." So technically, it probably wasn't her purpose. It was probably the orb's purpose, because I think we're just flesh and blood. We come, we go. We're not eternal. I know people say we are, but we're not. So I think those orbs, that energy is eternal. Flesh and blood isn't. So I think those orbs are eternal. Pac-Man, the person that said BS, has wrote something. I haven't read it yet. I've just seen it. How come sensible question by the sounds of it. How come scientists ain't been able to create even a single living cell? So clearly a religious person. So the first question would be: is how is God created then? If there is no such thing as chemicals that can create life. So just look it up. Look it up, Pac-Man. Type in what chemicals do I need to create life. That's what you have to do. And then Pac-Man's wrote, I'm not religious. Okay, fair point. I stand corrected. But I know non-believers ain't got a leg to stand on. And then wrote, God is one. So I'm guessing you are religious, let's be honest. You don't write God is one. But no, I'm happy to show you the evidence that God is... You won't bother. No one does. I'm happy to show you the evidence that God was an Anunnaki. If anyone's listening and is interested, there's a website called ourtruehistory.co.uk. Just go there, scroll down on the homepage where it says click here. Click that. It's a video, 34 minutes. There's hours more, but you just need 34 minutes. And then you'll see that beyond the shadow of a doubt, 100% debunked, God, meaning single God, debunked, and everything is as it seems, as I've been saying. But you won't bother, Pac-Man, to go and watch that, because even if you did, you'll skip through it, and then you'll come on and say BS, and then I'll say, show me where I'm wrong with evidence, because I've given you evidence in that video. And you will not be able to show me where I'm wrong with evidence because you don't have any. So when you say that non-believers hasn't got a leg to stand on, I'm happy to talk to you. One of us, I'm not going to mention names, either Pac-Man or myself, would probably win the debate very quickly with evidence. Lee has wrote, apart from the Atrahasis and Leash, what other ancient books to buy? So technically you shouldn't have bought the Artra. I mean, there's probably people, because obviously it's out of copyright print, being as old as it is. But yeah, you shouldn't really buy those. They're available on PDF online, and in just translation format. So what other books to buy? Ancient tablets to buy. The Myth of Adapa. So really, don't buy these. You can just find them online. The Myth of Adapa, which is Adam from Adam and Eve. If anyone's interested in finding out who Adam really was, not the original Adamu, but Adam. If you're interested in that, type in the myth. Of course, you do realise that literally they stick the word myth in front of everything to do with Sumerian, but they don't stick the word myth in front of the frickin' Israel God. Do they? No, they don't. They don't. Trust me, I do my research, and it frustrates the hell out of me. Anyway, so yeah, the Myth of Adap is a good one. The cuneiform parallels of the Old Testament. Again, if you're religious, please don't listen. Basically, it was a 1912 translations. So basically, a person wrote a book. I can't remember the name. Surname King. Wrote a book in 1912 where he had already translated the ancient tablets and thought, hang on a minute, these tablets that predate the Bible that talk about this race of beings, obviously he didn't know that they were a race of beings at the time, but now we can just work it out, and obviously we've got a lot more knowledge and stuff like that. But yeah, so he's basically said, hang on a minute, this Enki talks about 6 days and there's a rest on the 7th and the Great Flood and God wants to kill people, and Noah or whatever else is in the myth. So it's basically called Cuneiform Parallels of the Old Testament. And once you see that, once you read that, you start going, okay, how the hell can any religious person debate this when these tablets predate the Bible and the Bible's clearly copied from? We know the Bible copies from. I even debate still with people on posts when I say, you do know that, and I had someone write back saying, I don't care. God is still the one. I'm like, what the hell? If you don't care, then don't bother fighting me. Don't argue with me. If you don't care, just move along. I thought you cared. I thought you was interested, but clearly not. Pac-Man's wrote, gods are like kings, etc. Well, technically, kingship, the Anunnaki, which was their race name gods. We've got the tablets that predate the Bible telling us that their names are gods because they call themselves gods and goddesses. They actually gave kingship. They gave in the actual translations. I think it's in Oxford University website. There's translations where they give the first kingship. They give a crown and scepter to a particular person. So they actually give the. So we've got who that goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the terminology. Who in the first language ever, bearing in mind only probably a handful of people could read or write back then, in Sumeria, in a cuneiform tablet, start writing stuff about a fictitious group of people called gods who had knowledge of knowledge of agriculture, money, kingship, laws. Oh, guys, so easy if you just open your eyes. Sean has wrote, so who should I pray to? No one, in my opinion. Now, I would say, I'd caveat that, you can pray for a manifestation of what you want. So there's people out there that says, when they pray for good luck, they get good luck. There's people that say they pray for rain, they get rain. Nothing to do with the Anunnaki. And let's forget an almighty being. Because the almighty being doesn't need a lapis lazuli throne to sit there and then wipe us out and decides to be a judgeful good God and then decides, I tell you what, I was just about to wipe everyone out, but hey, go get a boat and we'll save some. What? Just don't flood then. If you're going to save some, don't flood. Of course, it was Enlil and Enki that was dealing with that. And we've got the original tablets. We've got the original tablets that talk about them debating on whether or not they're going to create a flood. So if you are interested in... now, there's the spirits, loved ones that's passed on that haven't already crossed over. If you think of them, they'll hear you. So if you want comfort in any shape or form, and you've got loved ones that's crossed over that hopefully hasn't already crossed over again, then you've probably heard people say, go over to the light. If someone's dead, they say, go to the light. That's them crossing over again. But of course, when you're dying, people say, I can see the light. Well, hang on a minute. Which is it? You've got two lights now. Yes, one to go cross over and then one to cross over to the next plane of existence. So if you've got loved ones on the other side, you don't have to pray to them. You can ask for advice. Obviously, you're not going to get a full sentence, but I can go into all of the how to communicate with them and stuff if you want. But they're listening. So that's who I would listen to if you want to talk to anyone. Kimberly's wrote, it's great to hear your voice. Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate that. And it's great to see your name. I haven't seen it for a while, so thank you very much. Grumpy has wrote, we are the aliens. Technically, we're part aliens, because if you agree that the Neanderthals were indigenous, then we've obviously got half Neanderthal and half Homo sapien, which could be the Anunnaki's DNA. I know we all say, no, it's our DNA, but it could be the Anunnaki's DNA for all we know. But yeah, so I would say part. Sean has wrote, could God be water, the source of all life? Literally, we have the tablets that predate the Bible that tell everything that's in the Bible. So basically, if you didn't have a Bible, would you have known about the word God? Think for a second. Would anyone forget the Bible was never here? Would we be talking about God? No. Until we come across the ancient tablets, which talk about a race of beings called the gods. And in fact, the same beings were in Greece and in Rome, which is why we've got gods, plural, in all these different locations. So basically, when you say, could God be water? No, because we've got the word God is for the Anunnaki, is their race name. All you have to do is go to the Oxford University website, There's a particular way to get in to look for the Sumerian translations, and then type in the word God when you've got the option at the top. And the amount of times they call themselves gods and goddesses, this is before Bible, way before. So that's, if you're talking about blasphemy, then they all need a damn good slap, or that's their race name, because when they say, God this, God that, I mean, how it goes back to the god of Babylon, the god of Israel, the god of water, which was Enki. The list just goes on. But only the people that wrote about the god of Israel is what we read in the Bible. But I read all the tablets, so if I could make up a second Bible off of Enki. So we're reading Yahweh's, which is Enlil's, which is the god of Israel. That's your Bible, pretty much. So I could write a whole new Bible based off of Enki, and sometimes there'll be a crossover. You'll see, the god of water chats with the god of Israel because they were half brothers, and then obviously Satan will come into it. But of course, it's not Satan; it's an adversary. So, for example, who do you think Enlil's adversary was? Marduk, who was Inanna's adversary. Marduk, yeah, he had issues. Ninurta's adversary, Marduk. So you can probably guess who's Satan, which is a more modern name. Trust me, Satan wasn't in the ancient tablets. So no, I don't think God would be. So you have to kind of get the word God out of your head, because it's already been claimed. It's there. It's theirs. That's it. It's just what we've been programmed to believe, that there's an almighty being based off of the word God. Once you break free of that, everything just falls into place. Christopher's wrote UFOs have been around for centuries. Absolutely, totally agree. Salvatore's wrote, who was more advanced than the Greys? Who is more advanced than the Greys? Bloody hell, you and your bloody questions. Go number 3 in the class. Excellent question. So the Greys, as we know, there's certainly 2 types. There's even 1, even 2, or Orion and Zetas. Zetas don't like anything to do with the Orions. The Orions are the half robot type ones. So we have to sort of, if you're going to go with the who's more advanced, obviously the Zetas have very good technology. Now, supposedly the praying mantis are one of the oldest here in our universe. Now, if they are, does age equate to technology? I don't know. There might be smarter things quicker, or certain materials on someone's planet that will help them evolve quicker. So, for example, we don't have element 115, but the Zetas do. Did they get that from their home planet? If they got that from their home planet, they could have been, way ahead of us in terms of creating free energy because of element 115 than we are now, if you get what I'm saying. So it kind of depends on the level of technology that they had and the speed that they went. But also, the praying mantis has been known to work with humans and possibly Nordics or Palladians. The people, because they look similar, people don't really know which ones they are. But if that's the case, and they are working with people or other aliens, then technology, I'm sure, would be shared. So you could say, well, then they would probably be the most advanced. But then you could say, well, what about the Dracos, where they go over and wipe out a planet and probably take their technology, so you could get future, faster technology by assimilating a culture's or a planet's technology. So I don't know the answer to that. I know we're not anywhere there, and I know that the Anunnakis were not there. They didn't have anti-gravity technology for their craft, as far as I'm aware. They did have helicopters. It's even in the Bible many a time with the whirlwind, and there's a passage where someone's walking along and one of the gods is hovering behind them as they was walking in the whirlwind. So yeah, it's a helicopter. That's the same one that was on the Abydos carving above the doorway. That's my opinion. So I don't know. Good question. I don't know the answer to who actually has the most tech, but it's an interesting question. Grumpy's wrote to Salvador, always the Joneses. Yeah, keep up with the Joneses. Danny's wrote, living in Antarctica or Antarctic. I'm guessing you're saying aliens live in Antarctic or the Anunnaki live in Antarctic. I wouldn't have said the Anunnaki live in Antarctic. I can't see them doing that, but that's not to say that once the majority of people left or the Anunnakis left, Antarctica probably would have been the best place to hide here on Earth because it's very difficult to get to. So I don't know. You could be right on that, I guess. Salvatore wrote, do you think the elites can extend their lives to live longer? You're number 4 in the class for that. I don't know. I have no idea what positions you are, but brilliant questions as always. I do actually. So when you go back to the ancient texts and the Bible that talk about restricting our lives to 120 years, does that mean the offspring off of the Anunnaki and humans were restricted down the line? Because obviously, originally, Adam and Eve lived a lot longer than 120 years, but it was after the flood is when they said they're going to restrict our lives. And there was only a handful of people that they were aware of that survived, and so it wasn't just Noah and the crew on his craft. So if they genetically modified any offspring after Noah to have 120 years max, it shows us how bad our diets are these days. If 120 should be the max and we're popping off at 70, 80, then clearly either our diet or the elites are putting stuff in to bump us off early. But yeah, I mean, you know how much far ahead the secret military complex is in terms of technology, and even if I think they do cloning. That's supposedly in one of the levels on, or was in Area 51. So I think I've heard that they've been dabbling with salamanders and things like that, where they can regrow certain body parts. So and even with the giant from the Kandahar, supposedly they was going to whisk the dead body away and try and make a super soldier out of it, e.g. a giant. So they, I think they would have been the end goal would be longevity of life for any elites, because you can have as much money as you want, but when you die, you die. So either cloning and then having their spirit orb transferred to their body, which is I've heard many times from abductees as well as whistleblowers from military bases saying that that's possible now. Obviously, Dolly the sheep was a clone, so and this was just what we've been told about. So we know that they can do cloning for sure. But the longevity of life, I certainly think there's DNA markers in. In fact, it was just 3 or 4 days ago I read something on the news about they found a certain, was it plant that we could eat that would help extend our life. So yeah, I think they have probably got the capability. I mean, looking at the elites now, the Rockefellers and the Bill Gates and the Schwabs and all those people that don't want us here anymore, they look old. They look like they're aging. Now, I know there's people that say that some of them look slightly different and therefore it could have been a clone, and it could be. But I have a feeling that the reason why they're allowing themselves to look older is because there is a cloned body waiting for them when we're not here anymore, because they can't come out at 25 years old again right now, because clearly their work isn't done, and we'll all be going, what the hell? But once we're all gone, they just go into the next cloned body, and they'll come out young. They'll still be in charge, and whoever's left would just be too worried about their own lives to worry about whether or not Bill Gates now looks 25. So, but I do think that they've probably also got the technology for extending their lives. So, good question as always. Fraser wrote, do you think Alexander the Great was a descendant of Marduk? Oh, interesting question. Go number 2 in the class for that. That's an interesting question. I'd probably want to do a little bit more research before I give you an answer on that. Yeah, I'd need to do a bit more research on that. I've not looked at the connection, so I couldn't. I'd need to do a lot more research to see. Sorry, I can't answer that one. It's a good question though. Lewis has wrote, have we found the plant that gives long life, Fountain of Youth? Well, according to the tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh and so on, the plant was sacred. Whatever the plant was, the elixir, there was an actual name for it, actually. I can't remember it. I'm terrible with names. I'm in the wrong job and I'm trying to remember all these foreign names. But it was sacred, and obviously they certainly didn't want us humans, cultivating it and whatever else, and creating. I know some people actually say, oh, it's cannabis or whatever, but so the answer to your question is I don't think they would have. And Gilgamesh went looking for it, and the only one he found. Well, technically, he didn't go looking for it. He came across it, in fairness. But he found that in the water, which would be, as you say, Fountain of Youth. But when he went back home after losing it, which the story goes that a snake in a cave as he was going back, it was a massive long cave, which is interesting because we don't have these massive long caves that I'm aware of, but maybe there really is. But anyway, he fell asleep in the cave and a snake came and took the plant away with him. And my argument is, how does he know it was a snake if he was asleep? But anyway, that's just the way my brain works. So he knew about the plant. So when he went back to his mum, who was Anunnaki, he could have said to her, Mummy, wow, you're tall today. She probably could have been 4 foot taller than him. Anyway, Mummy, have you heard of the elixir? Where can I get some extra? Where can I get that from? I don't need to go all the way back to Nibiru. And she could have probably said, well, go have a chat with Utu, go have a chat with Nimna or whoever. But obviously the story doesn't say he did that. So I have a feeling that wherever it was, and of course the flood came. Did they lift it up and take it and hide it, or did it actually get buried? Was there a garden of this stuff, and did it all get buried when the flood came and they didn't bother moving it and took only a little bit? I don't know the answer, but I can't imagine us having it still on this. Like I say, that 2 or 3 days ago there was an article in the news saying, have we found the elixir plant? But I think I can't remember what country. It wasn't Middle East. It was a country, because that was my ears pricked up when I read the story, and I thought, whereabouts? Because if it was Middle East, anywhere Mount Ararat, around that area, Sinai Peninsula, anywhere that the Anunnaki were, that had bases, my ears were, I would have been right on that. But it was, I can't remember where it was. It was Cambodia or somewhere like that. I was like, I can't imagine them growing it there. But so no, the answer to your question is, I don't think we have found it. I don't think anyone would have left enough of it around, in my opinion. Salvador's wrote, any idea how far in space the black military have travelled? Good question. Go number 4 in the class. You're terrible. I mean, in a nice way. You're just like me. You save it all up and then you just bombard me with these brilliant questions. So I still contest the video that I saw back in 2004 when YouTube first came out of a military person. I know you may have heard me say it, but the military person had a projector behind him with sideshows showing UFOs and all sorts of stuff. And there was a group, loads of people in front, military people. And I re-saw those images in a video on TikTok. I think I did save it. That where they were flicking through a photo album. So in other words, the pictures that I saw back in 2004 are in a photo album of a military person showing someone else, but being filmed on a camera phone now. And I was like, oh my god, they're the same freaking pictures that I saw back in 2004. And obviously the military person, whoever it is that's showing these pictures, didn't show his face, but you could tell he was wearing some sort of military clothes. Had these pictures and was pushing out the same narrative as the person that I saw, Christ knows how long ago. 20 years ago, I think it was, give or take. So that person, I believe 100% that was real. I watched it loads of times, but I didn't. 2004, we didn't have ways of saving things properly then, downloading all that lot. Anyway, he said that on one of the pictures that there was an American flag. He showed a picture of something. It was dark, but American flag on a spacecraft, and he said that's out by Saturn. So from that point back then, I would say they've certainly traversed our solar system. Since then, probably further. They've probably gone into deep space. Obviously, Gary McKinnon with the space fleet, where he hacked into various computers and saw that there was a space fleet with off-world personnel. So, yeah, they're certainly, in my opinion, they're certainly out as far as our solar system, if not further. So, brilliant question. Everything but green is right. We have to learn to stop being reincarnated and do it probably the first time. I hear what you're saying, but it's technically not us. If you go by my research, it's not us. We don't reincarnate. It's the orb that joins with us that goes back round. And the only reason why, it's like a hard drive. It stores our information, then it goes joins someone else. Sometimes that person can access the hard drive. Doesn't mean it was recorded on that person. Just like you take a hard drive out of one computer and put it in another. All the files that's on there wasn't recorded on the new computer. It was recorded on the previous computer. Can you access those files? Yes. And that's the same. So I don't think we'll ever be able to stop reincarnating because I don't think it's us. Jane had wrote, sorry, disrespectful person. I'm guessing that's the person you muted, which was Mark J. Thank you, Jane. I have no idea what Mark J done, but shame on you. And you can't get past Jane. She will hunt you down and send her dog after you. Thank you, Jane. Appreciate that. Gary's wrote, do you have a memory of past reincarnations? Interesting question. Someone's asked it about me. Get a little gold star for that, because it's a good question. I don't. Unless it's someone lazy sitting down doing nothing, then no. No, I don't. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't want to. Because I've the amount of people that I've heard, thank you, History and Coins. The amount of people that I heard that have had, past life regression, or they believe that they were someone else, it consumes them. Somehow, not all, obviously not all, but it consumes the ones that I'm referring to. There's a guy on TikTok, and his surname's very similar to Pendragon, and he believes that his lineage is to do with Arthur and all that kind of stuff. Arthur and who I'm talking about, King Arthur. And it's once he realised that, it's consumed him. And the same goes for people when they say, "Oh, I was this person," and then they start wondering, are they frightened of heights because of this person? Are they frightened of water because this person drowned? Are they frightened of... And it just starts messing with your mind. And I don't think I would want to know. I'm probably going to be all right, really, if I did know. But unless it was someone, like from Sumerian times or something, then it would really bug the hell out of me because I'd want to know everything. But if it was just some person, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, whatever, I wouldn't really care that much. But I know there's people out there that would. So no, I've not had any past life memories of reincarnation. But if you're interested in reincarnation, do look. They've done videos on it. Honestly, guys, if you're interested in knowing whether reincarnation is real, just go to YouTube, because I know people can't be bothered to read these days. Go to YouTube, type in Virginia University reincarnation, and once you watch all the testimonials and evidence and everything else, you're just like, wow, that's just, you can't have that amount of coincidences. So yeah, it's very cool. Ollie's wrote, I thought Allah was just Arabic for God. It sounds really bad, doesn't it? I kind of avoid talking about Allah because certain people, Christians are great, really, in their hearts. They'll say BS and all that kind of stuff, but certain group of people, will defend their lives with. History has wrote, I'm looking into that with near-death experience and out-of-body experiences at the moment. So History and Coins is looking into that. So I'd love to see your videos when you do them. But Virginia University, you can't beat their research. I mean, they was granted by the guy from Xerox when they first started. This is going back a few years, obviously. They was given £1 million to look into near-death experiences from the guy that created Xerox company. Fascinating. Just look it up if you're ever so slightly. So I just kind of avoid Allah. Sorry. No good has ever come from me mentioning anything to do with that side of it, if you get what I'm saying. I just end up more aggro than I need. Trinology is wrote, are we aiming to reach a higher plane of existence, or is the universe just forever learning? So from what I gather, it's the orbs that learn. They're the eternal ones. We don't, when our flesh and blood die, that's the end of us. Now, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about the universe being a cyclical, cycle that goes round and round and round. Is that true? I don't know. Could be. Makes sense in some ways. That when the Big Bang happened at the beginning, it was the end of the last time that it went round, and in which case everything just goes round and round and round. So it kind of makes sense, but I don't think the universe or anything or normal animals and us are trying to achieve a higher enlightenment. I know monks say we are, but it's not. It's really, you can't, even if, like I say, go watch the University Virginia reincarnation, you'll realise there is no way these people have their own soul, spirit. Because if they had their own soul or spirit and it was born with them, then how did they get the past life? It has to be an orb that goes around joining. And even the Quran, not that I talk about it, but that talks about your spirit joining with you 3 to 4 months in the mother's womb. So even the Quran talks about that. Not that I like mentioning that, but scrolling down, everything but green is wrote, true grumpy, but we need to try to get it right and stop coming back so we can move on to our next chapter. Andrews wrote, we have many lives, reincarnation. Again, we don't, because if you had many lives, your spirit is not yours, is it? Because if you was born and had brand new spirit with you that you created, then how did you get a past life? And then you could say, well, okay, I've got someone else's past life joined with me. But then when you died, two of your, those two, yours and the other one, will then have to go into someone else. And then they'll have 3. Before you know it, people's got billions of past, orbs inside. No, it's just one. Just talk to any clairvoyant, good, decent clairvoyant medium or spiritualist, and you'll find it's not your own spirit that is yours. Roxy's wrote, scientists can grow stem cells. They can indeed. Grumpy's wrote, our true history is right. Our Earth form is not eternal. However, we are an energy and continue regardless of religion. I'm guessing that's religion. I still say it's not. I know you just sort of said, however, we are an energy. I don't think it's us. I think the energy is an orb. I think they're eternal. If you believe the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, they were created at the same time as the Big Bang, so as the start of the universe. And of course, I wasn't around then, so if that's correct, and a lot of what it's pretty much everything that it says, even though it's almost in riddles, once you break down the riddles, you realise. I've done videos on my Patreon page about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth that break down the riddles if anyone's interested. And once you break it down, you can sort of see how clear it is, and you're just like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. Six has wrote, tell me that website again, please. So if you're interested in, I'm guessing it was the one, it's in the background there in red, ourtruehistory.co.uk. So scroll down on the home page if you're interested in finding the evidence that the Anunnaki. Tens of thousands have watched it on TikTok. Not one person has said I'm wrong on the documentary, and they've only watched 34 minutes because there's hours worth on my Patreon page. But you have to unfortunately join the Patreon to see the hours worth. But I put 34 minutes up. Not one person's gave me any evidence. They've not even said I'm wrong, but not obviously you can't give me evidence when I'm showing evidence that my evidence is wrong. There's no way you can do that. So yeah, there it is. Outtruehistory.co.uk. Scroll down, click the bit where it says here. Click here. Trillionology, who used to be called Watson, if I'm not mistaken, dear Watson. Sorry, I couldn't help that. Elementary. I've always thought our existence and every interaction in the universe has a purpose. I don't. I hear what you're saying. I don't. I know there's people out there that do, but I always use the analogy of a snooker table or a pool table. And when you whack the balls, at the end, they're all nicely placed wherever they are, and they stop moving, and that's great. But in between, everything was chaos. So just because, we're here now, doesn't mean, a billion years ago or 2 billion years ago, 5 billion, however, when life was first starting, it wasn't chaotic. I mean, David Attenborough will tell you that, if you go to a jungle, it's murder. Everything eats everything else. So, is that a purpose, as you say? Why is it just us? Why is it because we can talk? Thank you, Kerry. What makes because you wrote thank you, whoever's doing the hearts. I've always thought our existence. Why ours? Why not a dog? Why not a cat? I know obviously you're talking because of you're a human, so your mindset would be from a human, but why not an insect? Why not everything? Why is it just us? And the answer to that is because we're thinking about us, not other animals and things like that, and therefore we believe what we feel like we should really have, which is a purpose, but really no different from all the animals in the jungle that get eaten if you're not careful. It's just biological life moving on, in my opinion. So I don't think we have a purpose. I think the orbs have a purpose to, they have their soul groups and whatnot. Rocky's wrote, why is this history being hidden? Because if you found out that an alien race created you, that ends, and they had no religion, that ends religion straight away. If you found out that the alien races mingled and created us, you'd be like, wow, okay, show me more. Then you'd start looking into anti-gravity technology, which obviously the elites don't want, and then pharmaceuticals, where you can have medicine or technologies that far superior to ours, where you don't have to die from cancer, and so on and so on. And that means all the elites that run our country, and when you actually look, there's only a handful of elites that pretty much run our country. They own pharmaceuticals and all sorts of stuff. When you realise that they will keep that power, regardless of whatever, then you realise that they're the people that are hiding it from us, unfortunately. See, the thing is, people say, why is Bob Lazar still talking when, or allowed to live when, But it turns out that certainly nowadays, back in the 60s and that stuff, you'd be bumped off. But now, obviously, Bob Lazar was very well known as well, so you have to be a little bit careful on bumping someone off. That's bumping off a JFK, for example. No one really knew what he was bumped off for, so they can get away with it. Bumping off Bob Lazar, who said he's worked on an alien craft in S4 Groom Lake, that's his only one main claim to fame, and then suddenly he dies. That would be like, yeah, right, okay. But an astronaut caught inside a one of the capsules where it caught on fire accidentally, yeah, right, and locked him in accidentally when he was actually also starting to talk about UFOs, etc. But so it turns out that if you talk about things that will jeopardize the money and the power, so you can talk about aliens all day long now, but if you say free energy or pharmaceuticals or taking over the country, taking over leadership or anything like that, that's when they come after you. That's why I'm sitting here not too worried, because they're not interested in what I'm waffling on about. But if I started coming out with, "Hey, I've created you know what," they'll be watching me for sure. Far From Home has wrote, "What's the difference between the Anunnaki, the Draconians, and the Grey?" Anunnaki, 8 to 12 foot, white, pale skin, blue eyes, possibly red or certainly blonde hair. Some of them may have red hair. 8 to 12 foot tall, and they come from a planet here in our solar system. The Dracos or Draconians, they're a lizard type race. They have smaller reptilians that sort of do their bidding. The kings or the leaders seem to have horns, and they will wipe us out if they get the chance, apparently. And then the Greys, if you're referring to the Orion Greys, they're part android, and their masters, for want of a better word, are the tall whites. And the Zeta Greys don't want anything to do with any of the other Greys or tall whites. From Far From Home is right. The Bible didn't copy; it responded. No, it copied. Absolutely happy to show you this. Well, I'll tell you what. I don't even have to tell you. Just type in cuneiform parallels of the Old Testament. Cuneiform. That's the way that the writing was. Parallels of the Old Testament. Knock yourself out on that, and when you realise that, oh crap, the Bible copied these older texts, feel free to follow and whatnot and learn stuff. Trinologies wrote, like cells in our body, we all have a purpose and don't know why we're doing it. Obviously, our cells have a purpose. They help us grow and fight bacteria and whatever else. So I understand where you're coming from, but I still don't see, as a bigger picture that we've all got a purpose. But I can see why an orb that's eternal would need a purpose, because it's in order for it to learn. Because otherwise, if you can't join with someone, your life as an orb would be, for eternal, would be boring as hell. Even though you join with someone for a blink of a second in eternity, it's still something different than what you had if you didn't. So I can see that side of it. Roxy's right. When I was in Egypt, there was astronomy paintings inside the tomb ceilings. Yeah, I mean, obviously you've worked out that they knew stuff that. I mean, if you study that enough, you'll realise that there's stuff that they shouldn't have known. Really, not certainly back then. Salvatore's wrote, "Do you think Enki selected specific things to share with us in our DNA, with us humans in our DNA?" No. It's a good question. Of course, it's you. It's always you. Uh, good question. I've lost track of what positions are in the class, but yeah, go number 3. Good question. Um, no, I think so. You can read the translations of when they tried over and over 6 times to try and get the right creature, one that didn't have disabilities, etc. And they created a female in the ancient text. They created a first female, so that throws the rib whole hypothesis out the window. And I will be covering that in my documentary on my Patreon page about Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. But no, I think they just literally needed something that could do the work for them. So supposedly, I can't remember where I read it. Supposedly, the first Adamus couldn't talk. They could make noises, but they couldn't talk. And only when Adam from Adam and Eve came along, or Adam and Titi, was it that they could actually speak, and therefore that's why the Anunnaki called them the civilized ones. So if they wanted them to talk, they probably would have carried on genetically, because the first Homo sapiens were here 200,000 years before they ended up breeding with them. So Enki at any point could have upgraded them again. I would have thought, seeing as he did other, hybrids such as minotaurs and so on. So no, I think he just needed a basic creature that would do their bidding. So I don't think they would have needed to put anything specific. I think reading the text, literally, it was just trial and error, and then eventually they got one that worked. So I don't think they were sort of saying, "Oh, let's give them curly hair," or I don't think they did anything like that at all. Reading the text, Nikki's wrote, you can pray to the gods, god job roles, angels or demons. These will help guide you. What you'll find if you follow my research, proper research, not YouTubers and not the Bible, because obviously we know the Bible's been changed, because if you just go back to the Young Literal Translation, you'll see that the Bible that you read is part of baloney compared to the original one. Anyway, so what you'll find is that there are guardian spirits. These are the entities that join with people, that leave people, that eventually become guardian spirits. So when you say you pray to them, they will help guide you. You're probably getting information from spirit guides, not angels, because angels is a messenger. So I'm guessing you might be religious. Forgive me if you are, but the word angels is messenger. It's a fact, isn't it? It's a copy of an older word. It's a copy of a Greek word, which is a copy of the Sumerian word, messenger. So when you read the Bible and just take the word out, angel, and have messenger, it just basically says it all. And of course, the Sumerian, we've still got the words messenger in their texts, so we know that it's a copy from them, and the same sort of things that the messengers did for the gods in the Bible, or God in the Bible, is the same things that they did in Sumerian times. So angels know, and obviously demons. Hopefully you've heard me talk about demons before. Roxy's wrote, I'm O negative, Rhesus negative, so Anunnaki. I would say so, honestly, yeah. I mean, it's a foreign blood type. Everything matches that it would belong to the Anunnaki. So, yes, I would agree with that. Nikki's wrote, there's no need to worship, though. Nikki then wrote, we've got text and art which shows how people have channeled various gods, goddesses, angels, and demons. we've got text and art which show how people have channeled. I've never seen any ancient, when all of this was happening. Because let's be honest, it doesn't happen now. It's funny that when the Anunnaki disappeared, all the chats with God seem to have stopped. And I know people will say, well, I dreamt I spoke to God, or God helped me because I fell over and hurt my leg and it healed, and I had this and all. You just, whatever you want to say, you can say. But let's be honest, you go back to the ancient texts, God was forgiving, God said this, God said that, God allowed me to live, God did this, God did that. And there's actual dialogue between characters in the ancient texts, and we're talking Bible and Sumerian texts. So if we go to the time that it was all happening, there is no text that I'm aware of and art which shows people channeling the gods, because obviously the gods were the Anunnaki. So for the period that you're referring to, there is none that I'm aware of. Later on, when people start using their own imagination of what God would look like, and angels and cherubs and Christ knows what else they want to start throwing in there, then yes, that's probably what you're referring to, which I don't. I'll just go back to the original text every day of the week. Sorry, I don't mean to sound rude. Nikki's wrote, these are all proof of how we have them for support and guidance when we need it and want it. Again, like I say, there's basically, if you're looking at more modern interpretations of older texts, I could do one. I could write one right now and draw a little picture of whatever I want. And would you then say that that's proof? Because you've just said that what you're referring to is proof. But if you could show me ancient stuff when it actually happened in the time frame that these gods were around, if you can show me any text or art that, as you say, shows people channeling the gods, anything at all, then I'll change, obviously, my opinion on it. I have a feeling you won't be able to do that. You'll just point me to sort of more newer, texts, etc. Which is weird because obviously the newer the stuff, the fact that the gods disappeared. So then, what you're really saying then is, once the gods disappeared, which was obviously the Anunnaki when they disappeared, anything newer is God won't now chat to us properly like he did before. He will now just allow people to channel him. I say him because obviously the God of Israel, which obviously Nikki knows, is Yahweh, which would have been Enlil, because you can't have a God of Israel if he's the God of the universe. I mean, what a come down. So clearly Enlil was the God of Israel, because Enlil had a lapis lazuli throne and he lived in, you guessed it, Israel. And where did the God of Israel live? Israel. Did the God of Israel have a lapis lazuli throne? According to Ezekiel, yes, he did. Which is really, I would be embarrassed if I was the God of a whole universe, and not only would now my subjects are calling me the God of Israel. Come on, guys, I created you lot. Don't call me God of Israel. But if I had to sit on a lapis lazuli throne as an almighty being, something went wrong somewhere. It did. So when you say the proof, I would like to see that proof, if you don't mind. Nikki's wrote Loveless Live. Sorry, Nikki, I know I hate doing this. I do it to everyone. It's nothing personal at all. I just go through the logic of things. That's just, you probably heard me before, I'm sure. Grumpy Fake is right. I bypass religious books and have my own relationship with our creator and the universe. So we've actually got older texts about the creator and the 6 days, and then the rest on the seventh. We've actually got the older text that the Bible copied from. So now I know Sitchin says that the Anunnaki talk about the creator of everything, which isn't in the Bible. but we do have the text in the British Museum of the creation story. Of how our solar system was formed and how Earth was formed, and then we've got the text of Enki saying, he's going to rest on the seventh day. Enki, and we've also got the text where Enki says to Zazudra, Enki says, and it's in the British Museum, predates the Bible, not God, not Lord, even though he was the great Lord, not Yahweh, not Superman. Enki says to Zazudra, build a boat. You're going to need to build a boat because a flood's coming, basically. So we've got that, and the British Museum's read it out. Enki. So again, I'm not sounding rude when you say you have your own relationship with our Creator. You've obviously gone by the Bible, because if you took away the Bible, you would have no idea about a Creator. You wouldn't. Honestly, just think for a second. Take the Bible away. What else would you have known about a Creator? Nothing. You really wouldn't. Again, it sounds really rude me saying this, but sometimes we just have to cut the rubbish and just say, let's get straight to the point. What else would you have known if it wasn't for the Bible about a Creator? Nothing. So why can't the Creator that's in the Bible be the same as the tablets that the Bible copied from, which were the Anunnaki stories, which we've got enough evidence, more than enough evidence of? Nikki's wrote, religious texts are all special in their own way, written by people of the time. Well, the thing is, they may not be written by the people of the time. They may have been written over a long period of time, talking about older things. So we know for a fact that the Greeks talked about stuff that actually happened thousands of years before, including the flood. Thousands of years before, that actually happened in Mesopotamia. But the stories, for people that the uninitiated, sound like they're actually happening in Greece at the time, but they're not. The Greeks talk about the gods splitting up the land into 4 territories. We've got the original tablets from Sumeria where the gods split up the land into 4 territories. So because the Greek gods were the same gods as the Anunnaki, the same people. So when you say religious texts are all special in their own way, written by people of the time, they're not written by the people of the time that the thing happened. They're written way later on, which is why the Greek stories that refer to a lot of the stuff that happened in Sumeria thousands and thousands of years before are well out of whack. Babies being born out of the forehead and stuff like that, well out of whack. But that's only because of Chinese whispers, different languages, and so on. So I wouldn't say they were of the time. I will have to shoot shortly, guys, just in case before I do a few more questions. I do have a website. I've got thousands of videos on my TikTok, but on my website you can watch them all in one go, or sets of 5, whatever you want to do. Or you could search specifically for something that you're after, Jesus or whatever, crop circles, anything you want. And my website is ourtruehistory.co.uk, and if you're after the deep stuff, the long documentaries that I make, that I go into things that no one else has ever talked about. I mean, you can probably tell by the way I talk now, I'll go into things that no one's ever come up with the ideas or conclusions of. They're on my Patreon page, long documents, 3-hour documentary on everything you need to know about spirits. So it starts right from the beginning, right to the end of whether or not energy can have a life force. So yeah, that's just one. I've just look. There's hundreds of videos on my Patreon page if you're interested. Right, okay, to the questions quickly then. Everything but green is wrote, Grumpy, I like your style, man. Same here, have my own relationship. Sean has wrote, did the Anunnaki drink water? They drank wine, and they brought barley down from their own planet. We've got actual text talking about that. So I would imagine they drank water. I can't remember them saying... I mean, Enki was the god of water, so I would imagine they did. If you read the book of Adam and Eve, book 1, chapter 13, if I'm not mistaken, talks about Adam and Eve being on their craft up in space and having water there on tap. And then when they got taken down to a garden, I'm not going to tell you where it is, I'm doing a documentary on my Patreon page. But when they got taken down to the garden was lovely and the water was still flowing. But when they left the garden gates, they had to basically fend for themselves and they didn't know where the water was and everything else. So I would say, seeing as Adam and Eve drank water, I would say the Anunnaki drank water, if you believe those tablets. Nikki's wrote, the Anunnaki were avatars. Well, we've actually got text. Really, Nikki, you should read the texts. I don't mean to sound rude, but literally it tells you everything you need to know. There's tens of thousands that you can read translated. There's 2 million odd tablets that's been found. And they go on about things like pouring their semen into whatever. In fact, Enki did that into the Euphrates, as well as women. And, they talk about toothache and all sorts of problems that they have, trouble sleeping and stuff. So when you say they're avatars, I don't think having teeth problems would be an avatar. Honestly, Nikki, your mind will be blown when you start reading their lives. Once you start getting deep into their lives, it's not fake. No one sat there and made up millions of tablets and knocked up a story and then built temples and carvings and statues of these fake people for a giggle. No one did that for thousands of years. So yeah, read their lives in the translations, and you just think, wow, these are real characters, going through real hardships of their own time, with fighting amongst themselves and whatever. Trinologies wrote, do they actually look like praying mantis? Supposedly about 10 foot tall. They do have a praying mantis appearance. Yeah. That's everything I've heard. Eggshell white is the colour of the praying mantis one generally, sometimes green. But yeah, that's what I've heard. There's no other way of describing it, really. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I wish I could sort of say, well, it had sort of human legs or something, but no, it's literally a 10-foot praying mantis. But they're apparently kind, so if that helps. Grumpy's wrote, we can call our creator God or our creator how strong religious books are used to link to database, to debatable. Sorry. Sometimes I guess what the next word is going to be. That's my being stupid. We can call our creator God or our creator how strong religious books are used to link to debatable. Well, see, again, going back to the creator God, the Hebrews ended up writing the Bible. So if it was the Babylonians, we would have the story of the Babylonian God, because the God of Israel was what they were referring to, because they come from. Now, where do you think the Hebrews come from? You guessed it. I don't know. I don't know why people can't put two and two together. I really don't. I don't not knocking you. Sorry. It's just me. It's just I just see it so clearly in my own head. You may think I'm talking crap, but the logic is there, isn't it? I mean, they could. Mainstream will say that Marduk was a myth, even though we've got temples, carvings, drawings, everything about Marduk. We've got his backstory, everything. But the God of Israel, they don't. You type in, is the God of Israel a myth? It avoids saying it's a myth. And it's quite crazy how that God of Israel is not a myth, but the God of Babylonian is a myth. Just because someone says one's not in loads of text, even though we've got loads of text for Marduk. In fact, we've probably got more text of Marduk than we actually. In fact, we've got carvings of Marduk. We've got so much more of Marduk than we have of the God of Israel. 100%. No denying it. And yet, Marduk's a myth. It's crazy. Sorry, I do get annoyed. Sean has wrote, Yahweh is the only word we say in birth and in death as our first and last breath without using tongue. I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have said that at all. I mean, Enlil. See, Enlil never changed his name as far as I'm aware. So if you're going to say a name, Enlil would be the name, not Yahweh. But who's going to say Yahweh? This almighty being that needs a lapis lazuli throne and wants to wipe us out. Who's gonna say, "Oh, Yahweh"? I certainly wouldn't, because I know if you believe the Bible, obviously you can't believe it 100% because it contradicts itself. So you kind of pick and choose what you want. But yeah, I mean, he tried to wipe us out. As Jack Sparrow said, 4 of you tried to wipe me out, 1 of you succeeded. So yeah, I wouldn't say that that's the first and last word. Just in my opinion, that's Stone has wrote. When will we be in a futuristic world like Star Wars, where aliens walk freely among us? When we're not here anymore, when the elites have done what they're doing with the depopulation, after that, bang, 300 years later, according to remote viewers, everything's going to be as you see in Star Wars. So, unfortunately, we ain't going to be here because we're not the ones. Wolfers wrote, I believe, which is an excellent phrase from the poster of Lost, what was it, X-Files. That poster, actually, the original poster the picture actually belonged to Billy Meyer, and they used it. That's why if you look at the background, they changed it each season to try and get more and more away from Billy Meyer's original image. He sued them. Wolfers were aliens, or are we the aliens? We're part aliens, half Anunnaki. I couldn't say half, but part Anunnaki, part Neanderthal. Nikki's wrote, "What's your thoughts on portals?" Yeah, I mean, NASA admits they're real, so we've got just type in X point, and NASA's own website admits that portals are real. So if portals are real, then they're real. So yeah, whether or not we can conjure them ourselves with our own technology, slim. Natural ones, yes, according to NASA. Alien created ones, where they open it up themselves using tech, possible. Nikki's wrote, CIA, NASA are onto portals but don't understand them yet. Correct, spot on. Time check 8:30, so I'm going to really have to shoot, guys. I promised someone I will ring them, and I don't want them to be upset. So I'll 2 more questions and that's it. Alexander the Great, my dad's favourite historical person. And user 4600 has wrote, do you think the Earth is flat and are we under a firmament? We're not under a firmament. The only people that ever mentioned firmament were in the Middle East. So you forget all these YouTubers, forget everyone, forget the Bible. The Bible copied the older text, so the only mentions of the firmament were people going into heaven and back down. Heaven's being space. So there's a layer between Earth and space that is classed as a firmament. It's not an impenetrable dome. So if you asked anyone, and the Earth's round, if you asked anyone who was the first people ever to talk about the firmament, it's people in the Middle East without telescopes that saw it, that went up into heaven and come back down. So that rules the numpties out that start going on about, because none of us 9 billion can see this firmament, but they could, seriously. And that's so the YouTubers are getting their information from thousands of years ago of people without technology that mention the word firmament, and these YouTubers are going, well, yeah, it's got to be an impenetrable dome, isn't it? And they have no idea they're getting the information from ancient texts. They think it comes from the Bible because they don't do their homework. So basically the answer is no, it's not. It's a layer between the Earth and space. There's a gap. NASA says there's a gap basically when when it turns from basically blue sky to black sky, that seems to be the firmament. But again, not an impenetrable dome. Okay, I'm going to have to shoot now, guys. Thank you very much for a very enjoyable time. And do visit my website. It's got all the videos there. You can get to YouTube from there. Outruehistory.co.uk. Thank you, historians. I've overrun, so I will catch everyone again. Thank you, Petal. I do have these kind of live chats on my website or on YouTube. You get to everything from my website. So if you wanted to ever listen to me answering other people's questions, feel free to do so. It's on outtruehistory.co.uk, and hopefully I'll see you again when I do another live. Oh, bless you. Thank you, Petal. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, guys. I better shoot. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Bye.